Welcome to Inherited. I'm your host, Ruby Hall. And every week I'm joined by a guest who tells me about the relic, recipe, ritual and rule that has shaped who they are. And today I speak with Lucinda Price, also known as Froomes. Lucinda is a writer, presenter, content creator, and now an author. She recently released her debut novel, All I Ever Wanted to Be Was Hot, in which she opens up about her relationship with Western beauty standards and how her obsession with diet culture caught up to her. In this conversation, Lucinda speaks about her favourite way to move, a cherished relic she inherited from a family member she misses dearly, why she'll never diet again, the cosmetic procedures she regrets and the ones she doesn't, her beloved goulash recipe, and the daily ritual she shared with a friend she lost too soon. Just a note before you do listen, this episode touches on eating disorders. Help and support is available at the Butterfly Foundation on 1-800-022-222. All right, here's Lucinda.
Hi, Princess.
Hi, hun. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm going to call you Froomes today because that's when I first discovered you, Froomes. Is that all right?
Of course. And I think before we even get started,
Yes.
I need to say that I discovered you way before you discovered me.
Well, yeah, what is this? This is so funny.
So I keep all my photos in a hard drive.
Yeah.
And I was looking through, I think the year was 2016 or maybe even 2014, 15.
Yeah.
And there's a photo of this girl. So I used to find people's hair and save them.
Yes.
And I've got your hair 2 times. One time you got a short, blunt, blonde micro fringe.
Oh my God, yes.
What year was that?
That would have been 2013. Yeah. I was in my early 20s. I was a door bitch at the time.
Yes, bitch.
Yeah, that was that era.
Okay, and I've got I've taken photos from your
That's so
Facebook.
funny.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on Inherited today, Froomes.
My pleasure.
We'd love to start with your relic. A relic is an item you've kept that sparks certain memories. What is your relic?
Mine is a pair of rollerblades. So I love rollerblading. If someone was to ask me what hobbies I have, I actually wouldn't even know. That would spark fear in the deepest part of my soul.
Yeah.
I'd be way better at at uni when people are like, give us one fun fact. I could do a fun fact, but
Yes.
hobby, when you actually ask me what I enjoy doing, it's sitting on the computer and eating food.
Yeah.
So no, my relic is rollerblades. And I learnt how to rollerblade probably when I was 10, I feel like. So I had an uncle called Carl and he passed away in 2003 when I was 8 years old. And it was like a shock when he died. I was so young that I didn't really feel like I knew what was going on, but it still had a big impact on me. It was the first time that anyone in my family had died.
Yeah.
And we had a really beautiful connection. I would go to my grandparents' house every Sunday and he would always be there because he loved my sister and I. He didn't have any kids. And I'd sit on his lap and then we'd go out in the garden and I'd follow him around. One of my strongest memories of him is helping him move a plank of wood from the front of the house to the back of the house, and I'm telling him about The Simpsons.
Yeah.
It's funny how you remember little vignettes.
Yeah.
That's the one that I remember. Yeah, he passed away. I was 8 and, you're too young to go through someone's stuff and decide what you want, but somehow my family ended up with his rollerblades. He was 50, I feel like he was 53 when he died or something. So not exactly a 20-year-old on the rollerblades, but it was probably a good indication of his lust for life and certain way of living that I like to think that I've inherited from him.
Amazing. When was the last time you went rollerblading? What's the vibe? Where are you?
Okay, so vibe, I always go around Centennial Park in Sydney and it's this beautiful track. I think it's 3.5 kilometres, mostly flat with some hills. So that's and they always seem to be going downhill.
Wow, that's really brave.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've learned how to do the breaks. During lockdown, I fully learned a few more tricks.
Yeah.
One of the Shameless columnists, Eliza Sholly,
Yeah.
her and I would go down to the park and learn our tricks.
My God.
Yeah. So I was going to say I try and go every week, but because rollerblading is such a beautiful, fun hobby that I feels very sacred to me and that I enjoy, I just pretty much go when I feel like it. So I could go 3 days a week or not go for a month. And it's one of those things where I don't want to crank it or make it feel like a chore.
You did tell us it was your favourite way to move. Yes. Why is that?
I don't like exercise classes.
Yeah.
I went through an eating disorder and part of it was exercising and using exercise as a tool to punish myself or even, I didn't think it was punishing at the time. I just thought I was taking care of my body in quotation marks. And for me, that was exercising so often, not giving myself breaks. And so I did exercise classes, I reckon, for 10 years straight. And I definitely sometimes will get endorphins out of them and I'd love the feeling after. But I look back and I think that the mental strain that I put on myself to make sure I went to those classes wasn't worth the yield of the beautiful feeling afterwards.
Yeah.
So I say that all to say I don't do exercise classes anymore. I think I'm at the stage in my recovery where I could do them again and it wouldn't be about changing the way my body looks, but it's just I'm enjoying not doing them, so I'm not going to do them. But in that sense, I find the rollerblading, it really is doing the exact same thing as an exercise class if we're looking at it from a measurable.
Yeah.
It's probably as measurable as like a 1 hour class.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're using a lot of strength rollerblading as well.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Yeah, the scariness probably does something too.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like I'm not perfect at this skill either. I mean, I go to a spin class and I like always come third last. I don't know why they put a race on the board.
They do
either.
a race on the board?
Yeah. But I go because I love music and I love the sound of the music in the class and I love dance classes too. But for me, it's not something I'm great at, you know? So I kind of like going to challenge that in myself. Like I'm not perfect at this and that's okay.
I like that idea of that spin class. That sounds like a positive way. I've never been able to do spin classes. They're just like...
Oh, they're so hectic
They're
though.
so hectic.
I know.
But that is the kind of thing where you do walk out and you're like, whoa, I just did that. Like the human body is amazing.
Back to your Uncle Carl's rollerblades.
Yes.
So you shared with us that you had a really special bond with your uncle. And at 8, what did you understand of his passing at that time?
I remember being at home, it was the morning, and my mum came into my room really early in the morning and she was like, Lucinda, wake up. And I was like, why the hell are you getting me to wake up? And then I remember padding and I literally remember the feeling of the carpet under my feet as I walk into my parents' room. And I was like, Mum's usually at work by the time I came in. It was a school day.
Yeah.
And I remember Mum and Dad are in bed and then Mum starts crying and I'm like, what the hell? I'd never seen my mum cry in my life. She's not a crier. And they're like, oh, girls, like Carl had a heart attack. Like he's died. And I was like, oh. I think because he wasn't like a parent, you know, he was my uncle. So it's a very different experience.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like this new thing. Like I didn't know anyone who's ever died. I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was kind of like a shock and a like, oh, well, I was very curious, like what does happen next after somebody dies? What, you know, are we going to go to my grandparents' house? I think now because it was 21 years ago, you imbue it with meaning from the adults in your life and you talk about it. Like we talk about it in my family. But I do remember very viscerally the moment when my parents told me. It might have been the next day, but I think they eventually were like, we're going to tell Lucinda the truth of what happened.
Yeah, right.
And I think when somebody dies like that, especially when you're young and you don't exactly, I had never like experienced what it felt like to feel down or anything. So it does feel very alien. Like, why would you do that? You know, because growing up, like my dad has bipolar 1. So like mental illness was just like a part of my family and not in a sad way. Well, my dad doesn't really get depressed. He just goes like, he gets mania. So it's very different actually to what I'm sure my Uncle Carl was experiencing.
Yes.
But in a way it wasn't like we were like perfect, happy families. Everything's, you know, Stepford Wife vibes. Like we were pretty kind of rough and tumble family. But he was one of the adults that I knew that I felt treated me like an adult.
Yeah.
You know, when I was talking to him, he wasn't dumbing himself down. And it's something that I bring to my interactions with children because I knew what it was like to be treated like a baby. And, you know, you are young. I was like a kid when I knew him, obviously. But kids are so much smarter than we think they are.
No, definitely.
I think it's easy to forget that when you're a kid, like you can be really perceptive. And so I felt like he would listen to me and he'd listen to my stories about The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, when someone dies like that, all you have is the memories. And whenever I do something exciting with work, I think of him and I think, oh, and Mum and Dad will say, oh, he would have loved to see what you're doing. And my sister's taken after, does the same work that he does, like works in law. And he did like amateur acting and amateur stand-up.
Right, before he got into law.
Well, at the same time.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So he's the kind of person who would do like a million things, lots of different hobbies.
Yeah.
Single, so like kind of a single operator. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of parallels between us and he really liked to socialise and he particularly captures my imagination because no one says this outright, but I think there are a lot of similarities between us.
Yeah, right.
And I always joke how he's my actual dad.
That's so funny. I was going to say, like, sometimes we actually have these innate bonds with like our aunties or uncles or our grandparents in our family. It's not necessarily like our mum or our father. Like, it's interesting. Yeah.
It's nice and it's like, it's quite wholesome. But yeah, he taught me a love of rollerblades and that's definitely why I started. I think it was to like try and maybe feel closer to him as a kid. You know, I thought about it a lot and I thought, why would he do that or this or that? And then finding joy in that is a nice little way to honour him, I guess.
Yeah. Did you ever go rollerblading with him at all?
No.
But he has inherited the rollerblades and then you've taken it on. I love it.
I wore his rollerblades for years before I bought my own. I think I maybe even only got my own because they were gifted to me from Impala, like Impala skates or something, sent me a pair.
Oh,
but
cool.
For ages I was like wearing his with like tape all over them and stuff like that.
I love it. Oh, that's such a cool relic. You also shared with us the sentiment that I try to live my life and have so much fun as a solo operator because everyone talks about him like he was so cool. And you were just speaking to that. What about having fun and going solo is so important to you?
Yeah, so I think he was probably one of the only adults in my life who was single or like kind of doing his own thing. And yeah, everyone else in my life kind of was in a relationship and then when they were older. So it felt like a package deal. So I don't actually think sometimes you can have a closer relationship to someone when they don't have a partner because you got their full attention. Because otherwise I think if you're a couple and you're dealing with a kid, like half of it gives half your attention and this and that, and then you got your own kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it's even like not psychic in a spiritual way, but like in my mind, if I think, oh, he was a solo operator and he did whatever he wanted and everyone thought he was really smart and cool.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be like him.
Yes.
It's kind of,
like looking up to him. Yeah. And now you see yourself so much in him, which is beautiful.
I know, isn't it weird? And I think, did my sister and I choose these career paths because of him? Because, I think he'd be excited to see what we do because it is so similar.
Take me back to 8-year-old Lucinda. What was her childhood dream?
Oh my God, to be Sandra Sully.
I love it.
Yeah. Did you have Sandra Sully in Perth?
Yes. Yeah. Was she on Channel 9? I think it was Channel 9.
Channel 10.
Channel 10.
Yes.
Oh my God, those were the days.
Channel 10, Sandra Sully News, and then Rove, Simpsons, the OC.
Yes.
I swear, like, there's a section of my brain that is just purely 2003.
Yeah.
And I can tap into it at any time. It's like a room in my mind.
I love that.
Sandra Sully's on the TV in the room.
So you wanted to be like a TV presenter on screen?
Yeah. Full TV presenter, like got a script, like selling pet eggs or like on Rove as Carrie Bickmore. Like I loved all that stuff.
Did you go to study that straight away? What were you doing sort of throughout high school? Were you in like drama programs and
Yes, drama captain.
Love.
No less. Did all the plays.
Yeah.
Something that I think is so important and I think is maybe one of the biggest gifts in high school for somebody is to find a teacher that really like believes in you or that you really get along with. And I had a teacher called Miss Smith and she was a drama teacher and an English teacher. And she was my 1-2 drama teacher in year 10.
Yeah.
And we just instantly got along. And then she had me for 3 subjects and one of them was English in year 12. And up until that stage, like I wasn't good at English. Like I was good in primary school, but then as soon as it became competitive and it was like year 7 onwards, I just had like the most average grades. But then when I got into Miss Smith's class, I loved writing and like I won the school-wide prize for like creative writing, all this stuff. Like I'm not a writer, but she saw something in me, which is so important. That's why I've been able to write a book and call myself a writer. And now I think I am a good writer.
You're an incredible writer. Yeah. I've been reading your newsletters for a long time.
Thank you. But there's a lot of joy in it. And I think she gave me the confidence to be a creative writer. So not sit there. I'm still not very good at essays or anything like that.
Yeah.
But being able to like imbue your personality through words and the ability to choose what words you like to express yourself. And I love the crafting of the story. I love that feeling when I sit down with my newsletter or even when I was writing the book and I'm like, okay, I've got the whole page, like, let's just get started and then I get in the flow. That's the happiest times of my life are when I'm writing.
It's so amazing when you do have a mentor, whether that's throughout high school or university, that you really look up to and they like help propel your own career trajectory in a way and make you believe in yourself and your ability. I've experienced the same,
How lucky are we? I think that's more lucky than many of the other advantages that you can have in high school. I think someone who believes in you.
Absolutely. You are now an author. Congratulations.
Thank
we will
you.
get to your book soon. But you're also a comedian, a performance artist, a writer, like we were just saying. How did Froomes come to be though, your online personality?
Yes. So Froomes, I got Instagram in 2016. So through high school and in my early 20s, I never had Instagram.
Yeah.
And I didn't have it because I was like so worried about the ratio. I was like, I can't be following more people than followers. Like I've always been so tapped in that way of worrying about how I'm perceived.
Yeah.
I think for a long time I felt like I couldn't properly express myself.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like I could fully express myself through style and stuff like that. And then something clicked around 2016. I got a job at Pedestrian.
Yeah.
It's like I often need permission to do things. Like now I had permission to post because it was part of my job.
Yeah.
And then I shaved my head in 2016 and that gave me permission to be more like myself, how I feel internally and explore my style.
Yeah.
So all around 2016 is when things started happening for me as Froomes.
Yeah.
And I think those few things, so getting the job, shaving my head, feeling like I was empowered and kind of getting the opportunities that I really wanted, that helped me become this character of Froomes. And it kind of is a character. Like,
Yes.
it's weird. It's like clothed in cognition or whatever. Have you heard of that concept?
No, I haven't.
It's like when you wear a certain outfit and it makes you feel more powerful. Like if someone's wearing a lab coat, they feel smarter.
Yes. Okay. Right.
So
yeah.
I get
love that.
Yeah.
I've got some dresses I think that instantly make me feel more powerful.
Yes.
I can think about them right now.
Such a thing. I'm wearing like a blouse, like a white,
I love
almost
it.
like a peasant blouse that I bought yesterday, and it's giving me like cultish vibes.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see if that comes across in the recording.
How are Lucinda and Froomes different?
So I think actually quite similar. But
Okay.
sometimes, like, let's say I've got a friend and the friend has a friend and the friend of my friend finds out that my friend is friends with me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
got me? Okay.
Yeah.
That's like the most convoluted way of saying a mutual friend. And they'd be like, oh, you know Froomes, like, is she crazy in real life? Like, is she crazy? And they're going to be like, no, not at all. I'm pretty, I don't know, low key.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I give very crazy vibes in person.
No.
But when I perform, that's when this little zany like clown comes out.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think I'm pretty, at least when I'm in a good way, I'm pretty like chill and like sitting and just like taking it easy.
It's so interesting you say that you weren't really online until 2016 when you were starting to work at Pedestrian, and that you almost needed permission to be yourself and find out your style. Because I've always seen you as someone that just like completely is like, yep, this is me. Like, I know what I'm wearing. Yeah, isn't that interesting from like an outsider, but how we perceive ourselves?
Yeah. Oh, that's a big compliment. Yeah. I feel like all of my kind of teenage years was always spent feeling like, oh, I'm not cool enough. Like, I know what I want to look like, but I can't seem to get there. I need to fix it. Or it was always kind of about expressing and wanting to be a cool girl. You know, I can think of all these like Tumblr girls that I wanted to be like, but that's just not my truth. Like, I think I'm meant to be the court jester. But however, in shaving my head and finding a way to express myself online that really suited me, that's when I could kind of become more cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's nice to hear. I think style is like a gift.
Yeah.
It's the same as being an amazing singer. Like, I think some people just have it.
Yeah.
Zara just has it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love her outfit of the days.
Out for the day. But like, that's like a lifelong ability of hers.
Yes.
Again, it's like a skill. I think you can learn to become more stylish.
Yeah.
You can study fashion. And I think all of that really, I think it's an art form.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people just have it. And Zara's a good example of that.
I love that. Oh, should we be listening?
Yeah. Hi, Zara.
What would your Uncle Carl say to you after all these years and the success you've accomplished?
Yes. I was talking to my mum about this last night because I did a book launch last night and my uncle and my dad came, and my mum was so excited. She's like, oh my God, you did amazing. But like my dad and my uncle were just kind of like there, like they didn't really say anything. And I was like, isn't that funny how like they were obviously there and I'm sure they were proud of me, but they're not very demonstrative. Like they're not going to be like, you're amazing. They're just like, hi, Lucinda. Yep. Cool. You came. Like, that's great. Whereas she's like, you know, if Carl was here, he would have been raving about it. He would have been showing his interest. I'm sure, like I said, my dad and my uncle are super interested, but they're just not very expressive people.
Yeah.
And I think I would like being around that expressiveness from a man. I think it would be nice. But I think, yeah, he would definitely be excited and proud of me. My Nana as well, his mum, I think of her often as well. And I know that she would say to Mum, oh, I think Lucinda's going to have it's going to be exciting seeing what she does. So there was definitely these little instances of people along the way who've encouraged me to see, oh, where's this going to go? So they have a bit of curiosity about where things are going to take me, which is nice. I think, again, I just think someone believing you is worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. That's how we believe in ourselves. What was your childhood like? I know we were talking about you a little bit younger running around the garden with your uncle as well, but what was your childhood household like as well with your family too?
So traditional family values, we've got a nuclear family occurring, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Didn't really have any rules, could go out whenever I wanted, get home whenever I wanted, you know, got given every Christmas, got whatever I wanted. So very, I think pretty idyllic in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my dad, for instance, is a real character.
Yes, I've seen him all over your Instagram.
Yes, you would have.
He's very funny.
So he definitely made things a bit interesting in a good way.
Yeah.
But definitely, my life was like The Simpsons. Of course, everyone, you know, there's parts that I would never share that are part of everyone's childhood.
Of course.
But I think if we're talking opportunities and ability to express myself, always I'd have a mum to listen to me.
Yeah.
I'd have a warm place to come home, always have food cooked for me, the most nutritious, beautiful food. And then I'll go to McDonald's and then Dad's going to the milk bar to get me whatever I wanted. So it was very much a culture of like, you ask for something and you get it.
Yeah.
Which I think I've come out well adjusted enough considering that.
Yes.
Like I think I was definitely spoilt, but it's something that if I have kids, I think I'd probably do the same for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, same for them. Ruby, you're not my child. You are not the father.
We'll get onto your rule next. So what is your rule, Froomy?
My rule, my love, is I will never diet again.
Yeah.
And I came to that conclusion after experiencing an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And it started, I think for so many people you have a disordered relationship to food and it just feels normal.
Yeah.
Like I don't know many people in my life who treat food like it is devoid of morals. Like I think the vast majority of people have a relationship with food that's complicated.
Totally.
I don't think it should be. That's what I advocate for, is the ability to have a neutral relationship with food.
Yeah.
But it's one of the hardest things you can do because you've got to eat multiple times a day. So if you are someone who's struggling with it, you're confronted with it all day, every day.
Of course.
But yeah, through having the eating disorder and coming out of it, a massive part of coming out of it was completely relinquishing the need to control my weight through what I ate.
Yeah.
And the reason that my eating disorder developed, I think the very easy cause and effect for me that's obvious, is that I started dieting.
Yeah.
And I did it really well. And then it devolved into an eating disorder, which is what happens, I think, when you get to a certain weight, or, you know, when people start complimenting you, and all of the many people who've experienced what can be diagnosed as an eating disorder will have a similar story, I think, which is that if it's restrictive and you lose weight, you get complimented, you get celebrated, and then it just goes deeper and deeper and your habits become more and more stringent, and then you're suddenly in an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And because I can pin a lot of the blame on my initial decision to go on a diet, I just would never mess with that again, because whatever privilege I got out of being a certain size is nothing compared to the psychological impact that it had on me, the energy and time that it took away from me, the energy and time that it took to get out of it, and the total rewiring of my brain that I had to dedicate years to doing and years of thinking. And that's part of why I wrote the book as well, because I had thought about it so much. So writing a book, it just kind of came out of me because I was like, I've been thinking about these concepts for years. I've been having to study these for years in order to get myself out of it with help. So yeah, dieting, I just would never do it again because I'm cognizant now of the fact that it doesn't work. And I feel proud of myself for coming so far.
You should be really proud. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very vulnerable story that you've shared with everyone, you know, and you went through that experience of writing it as well. Your book is called All I Ever Wanted to Be Was Hot. And you do mention in the book that this isn't the original title that you actually came up with. Can you speak to that?
The original title of the book was Perfect Candidate. And I had been writing the book probably for about 6 months at the time when it was time to announce it. And of course, to announce a book, you probably want to have a title.
Yeah.
And so I did all this brainstorming and I came up with Perfect Candidate. And my idea behind it was that, you know, a massive part of how I started dieting and started really focusing on the way I looked was because I wanted to do this job.
Yeah.
And being born in 1995, I knew I wanted to do this job forever. And all of the women that I saw doing this job looked a certain way. They looked perfect. Perfect teeth, perfect skin, perfect blonde hair, perfect clothes, everything. And so I was like, I want to do that. Therefore, I must look the same.
Yeah.
If I want to give myself the best chance of doing this thing that I really love doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about looking a certain way for me. It was a strategic thing. Like, I need to do this if I want to give myself the best chance of living my dream. But then when I was writing the other chapters or exploring other parts of my decisions throughout the years, I was like, no, Perfect Candidate doesn't actually apply to it because there's something else going on years before that. And after I'd finish every chapter, I'd be like, hey, why was I doing it? Oh, all I ever wanted was to be hot.
Yeah.
That was kind of the base of it. There was something in that felt very true to me.
Yeah.
And it felt like this thing that I just kept coming back to.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like what's it called? Like a ghost key or everything key?
Yeah, yeah.
Something
it
that
just it just kept popping back up.
Yeah.
For you. Like you couldn't ignore it really. Like
couldn't ignore it. And it felt like
Yeah.
it totally encapsulated a period of time as well, the early 2000s, where that word was very kind of used in a non-ironic context in a funny way. And it also just felt, like an honest confession, and it definitely helped me write the rest of the book and helped me explore the other themes from a framework that was less kind of trying to be a serious journalist and more being like, this is my base thought and now let's explore it through research and put a bit of respect on the name. But at the end of the day, this is just all I ever wanted.
Yeah, wow. Can you tell me about the moment this rule came into effect for you?
Yeah. So I had a restrictive eating disorder.
Yeah.
Then it turned into a binge eating disorder.
Yeah.
This happens for so many people who go through anorexia in particular, is you have like a rebound era.
Yeah.
Which is super scary because you're, again, I'm only speaking from my experience, but with the binge eating disorder that I experienced, I gained a lot of weight. And that was kind of my anorexia mind, its worst nightmare. Yeah. So I was kind of dealing with two things. You're dealing with the physical pain of doing something like that to your body.
Yeah.
Mixed with the feeling that, I'm totally living what I think is my worst nightmare. What am I going to do? I can't stop doing this even if I want to now. I'm on this kind of train that has no stopping system. Yeah. But I was so lucky to get into this Sydney University trial called Binge Eating E-Therapy.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was a online course and it totally helped me rewire my behaviours, thoughts and the patterns that I was subscribed to. So I had to like log all my food every day and I learnt about, I don't know if the word's biological. I keep saying this, like biological processes. I think there's some other word, not chemical, but something to do with what happens in your body when you don't eat, for instance. Like I learnt about the processes in my body and what's happening to them when I restrict or binge or do this or that. And what they advocated for was eating 3 meals a day and 3 snacks. And it was this kind of framework that I had to use.
Yeah, wow.
A lot of the rules that they gave us were totally seemed at odds with all the health advice that you get given, which is like you should eat 80% of your plate or, all these ridiculous rules that these health people often like spout on the internet or in magazines where you're totally not listening to your body. I mean, still there was the rule of eating 3 meals, but it was a beautiful way to reset the way that I thought about my body and food because I had one less thing to think about and I had a framework.
Yeah, wow.
And just what I learned through that is that then got me a bit more steady. Yeah. And I could learn through my research that diets don't work. Trying to manipulate your set natural weight doesn't work because your body's really smart. And it knows what weight it wants to be. Yeah, you can't. I mean, there are people who have lifelong eating disorders. Yeah. And many people that have a disordered relationship with food that don't realise it is or don't think it is. And that's also their prerogative. You're welcome to eat however you want to eat.
Of course.
But for me, it became unbearable and that's kind of why I had to change. But I learnt that your body has a set weight point. So, it's kind of futile going up against it. And that the number one way to gain weight really is going on a diet. Your weight shouldn't matter either way, but if that's an incentive for people to think twice about trying to control their weight, it's that your body's smart and it has a place to be. And I think, unfortunately, we live in a society where when you are in a smaller body, you do get advantages. So I think it's important, if I am going to spout this ethos, which is that your body has a set weight point, then I think it is important to change the way that we see people's bodies and the representation that we see on screen.
Absolutely.
Especially. Yeah. Because I think in order for people to be able to accept their set, some people's set point is a certain size, others is bigger, smaller, and we can't control it. And I think because we demonise larger bodies so blatantly in this culture, until that changes, the idea that your set point is a thing is quite hard to swallow.
Do you think we're getting better now in 2024?
I don't know. I think when I see bigger bodies on screen, I think that's a really good indication. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I'm too close to it to know.
Of course. Yeah, no, that's so fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the moment that you began dieting?
I think it honestly didn't happen until I started working at Pedestrian as a health and fitness editor. Yeah. Up until that point, I'd go through periods of eating more whole foods. Like I remember I used to cook heaps. I had a boyfriend at the time when I was kind of 19, 20 and we'd cook meals together and they would be really healthy. But again, I just didn't think about it. No. But I started trying to take control when I worked at Pedestrian. I'd start getting those like calorie controlled meals and thinking about the gym in a more kind of disordered way, thinking I need to do it rather than it's something that I enjoy. Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of probably started when I was 21, which is pretty late in the scheme of things, especially considering the fact that it devolved into an eating disorder. But, yeah, I think one of the first things was becoming someone who was a health and fitness writer.
Yeah.
Even when I'd write about it, I'd think it was silly when I first started, but it's still, I internalise the messages. And I think it's such a clear indication of the fact that you can do anything in your power to think that you're not taking in messages.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing them every day, then it does something to your brain, I think.
Definitely. I mean, we're so influenced, even if we know ourselves to our core, like we get influenced by people around us and our surroundings and like it just naturally happens, I think, you know. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Inherited. For so many of us, the holiday season is when rituals and traditions are born. It's where a lot of our core memes are made, and when it comes to gifts, it's usually the keepsakes we remember. I think this is why we always put so much effort into picking the right presents for our loved ones and why we try to give the most thoughtful gifts. I love a candle as much as the next gal, but if I'm going to give someone a gift, I want it to be something more meaningful. For me, this is jewelry. It's the most thoughtful gift, and one brand that always gets it right is today's sponsor, Majuri. I'm actually wearing a gorgeous necklace of theirs right now with my initial on it. I've already had a peek at their new holiday gift shop, and they have so many beautiful pieces like subtle necklaces for the perfect stack, right through to diamonds for something extra special that you could honestly tick off most of your list and your own wish list too. I also love that Majuri is all about self-expression through jewelry. It's very inherited coded. See, the fifth R, Ruby. A huge thank you to Majuri for supporting this episode of Inherited. All right, let's get back into the chat with Lucinda. What else is going on in your internal monologue, like at this time in your life?
I just was like, I've got this opportunity to get this media company. So many other people wanted this job. Like, I need to give it my everything. I'm going to be a star. Like, this has to be, I can leave no stone unturned. It was that it was like a mission mindset.
Yeah, wow.
And again, I think it came back to wanting to be cool. Like, for so long, all the like VJs, all the presenters that I saw were that very kind of like skinny, cool girl aesthetic. And I definitely equated thinness to coolness.
Yeah.
Rather than thinness to sexuality. For me, it wasn't really a sexuality thing. As much as I say all I ever wanted was to be hot, I think there's sexual connotations a little bit in that title. But for me, I think of hotness more as like the it girl or, you know, in demand. And to me, being thin was a really important part of that equation. And I think that it's only now that I'm at this point in my career that I do feel powerful enough that I don't have to be really thin to be cool. No. But I honestly think as well, part of it is because I do feel like I'm able to create what I want in my own vision and I'm not beholden to someone else making decisions for me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, like in a creative sense as well. Yeah. Because now you're a freelancer, obviously, aren't you? Yeah. So you obviously have more agency in what you want to produce as well.
Yeah, total agency. So there is not this thing hanging over me, this like boss that I need to appease and this image that I need to uphold in order to be given things. I feel like it could be a fallacy, who knows, but I feel like I'm in control and therefore I can decide how I want to live. I don't know if I were to go back again with what I know now, I still don't know. I could again fall into an eating disorder. I think there's so many things that can trigger it, but for now I'm pretty happy.
In your book, you also speak about cosmetic surgery. If you're comfortable, could you share the cosmetic procedures you've had?
Of course, princess. I've had 2 rhinoplasties.
Yeah.
First when I was 17, then another when I was 21. I've had a breast augmentation. I had lip fillers, which is a whole funny story that went wrong.
I have seen the pics.
You've seen the pics? Yeah. I've decided every year henceforth for the rest of my life I'm going to share the pictures. I think it's in July it comes up, so stay tuned for that one, folks. And I get Botox. So I've kind of done a veritable buffet of things.
Yeah.
And as well, like a lot of the less stigmatized beauty interventions like laser, waxing, fake tan, nails. I've done everything, hair extensions, hair dye, expensive haircuts, makeup, eyebrow lamination, like it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And it's important for me to write it all down in a list, to be able to take a step back and think there's so much money that we put into these things.
Yeah.
And I guess if you were to read the book, you'd see that I don't necessarily have an answer as to whether or not that's good or bad.
Yeah.
Because for me, I find a lot of joy in like getting dressed up and putting an outfit together. And I think some people would see that as being part of the problem, I'm sure. But for me, what I advocate for is if you feel good doing something, then you should be able to do it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I think when it's, for instance, with the breast augmentation, I've spoken about this before and I speak about it in the book, but that's something that I feel a complicated relationship to because I did it when I was 19.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I was really of sound mind enough in many ways to be able to understand the ongoing commitments that breast augmentation or any surgery that involves implants that need to be replaced.
Of course, you're so young at the time.
Yeah. You're not thinking about the 29-year-old that's sitting right here who's got to make decisions around when they have to come out. Do I get a new pair in? Do I get them taken out? Do I get a breast lift?
Yeah.
You know, the minute that you sign up for something that's implanted in your body, you're signing up for future surgery.
Yeah.
And I often feel like I don't remember that being expressed to me in terms that I now think they should have been.
Yeah.
But again, I was 19. I'm just excited to, you know, feel like my body can be perfect again.
Yeah. I'd like to read a passage from the first chapter of your book, Ski Slope.
Yes.
The surgeon, we'll call him Mr. Pringle, no reason, it's just fun to say, was a tall man with one of the largest noses I've seen in my life. Given I was 15, I was half expecting him to fob me off as way too young to be even considering such a serious surgical embarkment. Instead, he confirmed my greatest fear and biggest dream. My nose was big, and he could fix it. This was fascinating to read this passage, and I feel like it's something that people would rarely talk about as well, but is objectively interesting. That a surgeon, you were 17 at the time, weren't you, when you got your first rhinoplasty? Is that correct? Yeah. Can you speak more to this experience and with the surgeon as well?
Yeah, of course. I knew from a very young age that I wanted a rhinoplasty.
Yeah.
I trace it in my book. There's one instance that sticks out in my mind very clearly, and it was when a hairdresser made a comment about the shape of my nose. I'd never thought about it before. I don't think. I remember having like a relatively healthy self-esteem as a young girl.
Yeah.
I didn't feel ugly. I thought I was cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't seem to have any hang-ups, which is pretty amazing. So it was a really good example of someone kind of bestowing an insecurity onto you, which so many people that I've spoken to can remember the one time in their life where one person has said something that has sent you down the garden path of hating something about yourself.
Absolutely.
And as much as you have to take personal responsibility to how you feel about yourself, when you are a teenager or a child, it's going to hit you and you're going to remember it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, can you remember something like that?
No, I definitely do though. I think when I was younger, I could also obsess about things, you know, and make a big deal than it was. Yeah. And there are certain things that stick out in high school, you know, that people will say to you and you just don't forget. Or I actually did have quite bad acne, like only a few years ago, adult acne. And it was not something I was used to. And yeah, our appearance is so important to us because of the society we live in and many other reasons too. And I think when someone says something or something changes.
It's complicated.
It's so complicated. Yeah.
I was like happy when I saw the surgeon and he confirmed it. It was this feeling of, like my hunch was right. It is shocking. Like this is terrible and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
I look back now at the way I looked before the rhinoplasty and I'm so happy that I got it done.
Yeah.
But it is good to have the hindsight and think, I really did think it was worse than it was.
Yeah.
Again, worse, it's totally subjective.
Yeah.
But I guess for many years since, I would look at photos of myself before the nose job and think that I looked horrendous. But now I can see I never looked horrendous. I like the way that I look now more because it feels like me.
Yeah.
Even though my nose isn't me, I feel like I look like how I'm supposed to look in my mind's eye. It's a strange sensation.
Oh, yeah, I see.
And
I've
spoken to other people who've had rhinoplasties or procedures like this where it feels like a return to center. Like it feels like, oh no, I'm the person who I see in the mirror.
Yeah.
Now it matches. Whereas before there can be a lot of kind of like dysphoria there almost with a certain feature.
Yeah, interesting. So how do you feel about the surgeries you've had now? You're happy with your rhinoplasty?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very happy because it kind of just neutered that problem that I had, just got rid of it. Again, the breast implants, I feel like I regret. I think it's also easy to say that you regret something when you're coming up to the time where you need to get them redone and like I'm going to have to put money down. I don't know how much. I'm going in for an appointment in a few weeks to talk about getting them out.
Yeah.
And I think if I do it, I'm going to do like a TikTok series because I'd never seen someone get to the second point of the breast implant journey.
Neither have I. That's so interesting.
Yeah, so I think I need to do it for content.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, cool.
But that I regret just because regret's probably too strong of a word, but it's something that I definitely think about and I hope that within the industry there can be a bit more safeguards for young women. Again, I think, and I write about this in the book, if my 19-year-old self were to see me now sitting across from you, Ruby, talking on a podcast about how she regrets something, I'd say pull your head in, sis. Like, I want this now. You can deal with it later. But again, I think it's easy when you get older to say, oh, I wish I didn't do that. But it's also important to note that the breast augmentation for me, my breasts were asymmetrical. That's why I got implants, to try and even them out.
Yeah.
For 19-year-old me, that was integral to my ability to accept myself and accept myself as a sexual being as well. You know, having asymmetrical breasts to me, as majority of women have it.
Yeah.
But to me as a 19-year-old with such black and white thinking, I was like, I can't accept myself. I could never be naked in front of anyone else. Like, when someone's at that stage, I think psychological intervention is possibly just as important as the cosmetic intervention.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you were saying, it was a need, not a want. Our 19-year-old selves are very different to our 30-year-old selves.
Yeah.
That's 10 years in between. You went on a writing sabbatical last year and you wrote your book. What was it like to write about such a personal experience and now wholeheartedly share it with the world?
It was just fun, mostly, to be honest. There were definitely times when it was hard because I was worried about coming across badly, coming across like a bad person. I think when you're honest, it is like all of our honest thoughts, I think, are not good or bad. It's very hard to put a certain spin on something when you're being honest. I think people can tell with the book that I'm being honest. So, and I have been. So I think if people don't like it, I can stand behind it because I know I'm not trying to appease anyone but tell the truth.
Yes.
And it was actually quite fun. Like, I liked the process. Like I say, Ruby, I like writing, so it was fun.
Yes.
And it is fun to challenge. It was fun to challenge myself and see if I can put into words this experience that was so emotional and so felt in my body. Finding a way to transfer it from my physical body onto a page was like a beautiful challenge and both fun professionally and also obviously cathartic.
Yeah. Well, you should be so proud. It's a very raw story that I'm sure touches a lot of other people too. So
thank you.
And you love cooking it too. One thing that's always stood out to me was how much you celebrate, you know, food, all kinds of food. I'd love to talk about your relationship with food now. How would you describe it?
Yeah. Now food is an afterthought.
Yeah.
Which I think is so special and unusual. Even if I'm going out to like my favourite restaurant, I don't look at the menu anymore. I don't know if I'm going to want my meal that I get every time or if I'm going to want something completely different. And if I have a meal that I was looking forward to and it's bad, I'm not going to riot. Like, I remember when I was sick, I'd get a coffee every morning and if it was even slightly burnt, I'd want to cry because I was like, this is my coffee. Like, I've waited to have this all night, like, and now it's shit. Like, I can't deal with this. Whereas now I had terrible coffee this morning and I was like, that's fine. I'm just going to keep drinking it, which sounds so banal and pedestrian, but for so many people with an eating disorder, that stuff really, because you don't have much else to focus on, stuff like that can really like ruin your day.
Yeah.
But now my relationship with food, it's very neutral. It's just something fun to do.
That's great. We'll get into your recipe next.
Yes, perfect.
What is your recipe?
My recipe is a gorgeous thing called goulash. Have you heard of goulash?
I have, and I've seen it before on your Instagram stories.
Yes.
It looks really yum, but I actually haven't had it before.
Oh, well, yeah, because it is kind of, I had never been to a restaurant where goulash was served.
No.
I'd never heard of the word, but the word piqued my interest when I heard it because goulash is such an interesting word.
Yeah.
My old housemate introduced me to goulash.
Yeah.
Her name is Izzy and we lived together in 2020. We started living together and we lived together for maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, she's one of my best friends. And she's like one of the nicest, most caring, kindest, an innocent heart type of person, like wears her heart on her sleeve. And it was like bunking together as sisters when we lived together. It was such a beautiful relationship because I'm always quite cognizant of like who wears the pants in a relationship. And I often gravitate towards relationships where someone else is taking the reins. Like I like being not submissive necessarily, but I like someone else making decisions.
Yeah.
And my relationship with Izzy and a lot of the relationships that I built when I was coming out of my eating disorder felt very obviously equal. And our relationship was just full of fun and spending time together cooking. And she was really integral in helping me recover because she had a beautiful relationship with food and cooking. She loved to cook.
Yeah.
And she had no hang-ups. She was never using, you know, substitutes or this or that. She was always eating whole foods and kind of teaching me how to make delicious meals again.
Yeah.
And she introduced me to goulash. So her dad's mum used to make goulash. And what it is, it's like you can use different meats, but what she would have, it was chicken thighs with the leg in and the skin on, 6 of them with sweet Hungarian paprika,
Yum.
onion, garlic, salt and pepper. Then you fry it and then you put it with like a whole bunch of water and you just let it simmer for a few hours.
Yeah.
And then you create these kind of egg noodles with this thing called a spätzle. Like you make spätzle with a like spätzle maker.
Egg noodles.
Egg noodles, yeah.
So it's like you're literally cooking like fresh pasta, essentially.
Yes.
Noodles, yes.
Noodles. And we'd have it with this gorgeous cabbage salad. There'll be people listening who know like goulash.
Yeah.
And it's just so special. And because I remember the first time Izzy wanted to make it for me and I was kind of like, ew, like you're getting chicken with the bones in it with the skin on it. Like this is scary. Like this doesn't look good. But then you have it and it's like better than spaghetti bolognese, better than any kind of comfort food that I can imagine. And you feel really good when you make it because it is from scratch and it's such simple ingredients, cheap, and it feels like a main course, you know?
How has your relationship with food impacted some of your close relationships, like especially at this time during COVID living with Izzy?
Yeah, so food is such an important part of bringing people together, something that I didn't realise, for instance, when I had the eating disorder because I could barely ever go out for dinner with people. I was always so worried about eating certain things. I couldn't share a meal because I was like, I need to get my portion. If they eat a little bit more, even though I was restricting, I was like, I can't handle that. I had to have complete control.
Yeah.
So coming out of that and learning how to share meals, like quite literally break bread, like have these big raucous dinners with my friends, that was such a beautiful return to centre.
Yeah.
So yeah, now all of my relationships, I just love going out for lunch or for dinner with people and it's so easy to be spontaneous because beforehand, I was always kind of like budgeting for calorie budgeting and thinking, oh, I better not go out for breakfast because I'm going out for this later or this or that. Whereas now you can go with the flow, which I think has made me a better person to be around.
What was going on for you personally at the time of living together?
I was, recovering from the eating disorder, so kind of unlearning a lot of patterns. I was becoming a bit more relaxed. COVID was happening.
Yeah, lockdown. You would have been doing a lot of cooking at home as well.
Yeah. So that, that was helpful having someone who loved to cook because we would take turns with each other.
Yeah.
But the goulash was a really beautiful thing that we would do together. Yeah. And I think it's so special to have something, I would have never heard of goulash had we not lived together. And had she not.
What was the BTS in the background? Because I know you would film it as well and then it would be on your, Instagram story at the time. So what else was going on in the kitchen with you and Izzy?
Oh, like we would just be like chatting and having fun and she'd be teaching me and, she's like really knows what she likes in the kitchen. So she would really be kind of, that's when she would come into her power and kind of be bossy and say, no, you're doing the cabbage, like do it this way. And she taught me a lot of skills. Yeah. So it was just fun. It was like, almost felt like we were nuns at the time, like because it was lockdown. We didn't have, for a bit of it, I didn't have a partner. So we would like, it was like we were two nuns in the monastery or the nunnery or whatever, like cooking these delicious meals and having them. And it was like we were a couple.
I love that. You also mentioned this recipe brought so much joy to your employees, which is what you call your followers and subscribers.
Mm-hmm. I think the name goulash just inspired me to be posting about it. And because I couldn't believe it the first time she made it for me, I'm like, again, this is like 6 ingredients and it's the yummiest thing. It's better than any spaghetti bolognese or any kind of yummy food. And so I posted about it and because it was lockdown, a lot of the things I did on lockdown on Instagram did really well because it was kind of this story arc that people could follow and tune in on and it was very interactive. Yeah. So all of these people started making goulash and would send me their goulash and like tag me. There would have been hundreds of people who made it. And I just thought it was so beautiful. It was like we were all in a cafeteria eating the same thing. And I just knew that I was like giving the joy that I experienced when I first ate it with Izzy to other people. Yeah. I think often in today's day and age because I always think about like we don't really watch free-to-air TV anymore. No. And the thing that I loved about free-to-air TV is the fact that everyone all around the nation is watching the same thing. Like when we all watched Rove and he'd be like, flick your lights on and off. Yeah. And you'd look out the window and you'd see people's lights flicking on and off. Like what the hell? Yeah. So anytime that I can try and capture that sentiment or that idea in my own way is like pure gold to me. Yeah. So I loved the community element of that. I just found it so funny and I find it so amazing when, it's one thing to like consume things on the internet just passively, but when people are going out of their way to go to the supermarket and messaged me, wait, am I getting this chicken or this chicken? It just felt, it's so nice to influence someone to do something like that.
Absolutely. What have you felt with your followers, subscribers, or people that are coming to your book launch as well with your personal story now? What are some of the things people have been saying to you?
Oh, I get a lot of people now talking to me about their experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far the reviews from people who've read it have been really good. And there have been people who've said, you've totally captured how I feel. And that's very rewarding.
Definitely.
Because I felt, especially when you're writing something personal, I think you think, oh, I'm the first person to think like this.
Yeah.
But you realise, oh, you're not, Liza, again, the Shameless columnist.
Yes.
She coined something called terminal uniqueness. And we often talk because we've got kind of similar personality. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
Whenever we're feeling really like devo about something, she'll be like, that's the terminal uniqueness. Like everyone feels that. And not in a way that's dismissive, but rather like, don't let your terminal uniqueness.
I love that.
Yeah, make you feel.
Terminal uniqueness. Yeah.
You're so unique that you're going to die. Like, no. This is human, what you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's all G.
It's all G.
I love that. Well, we'll get on to your ritual last,
Yes.
Froomes. So a ritual might be a practice or activity you prioritise in your life, and yours is swimming in the ocean. So you inherited this ritual from a really special person, your late friend Daryl.
Yes.
Why did Daryl love getting in the ocean so much?
So Daryl, I'll tell you how I met Daryl.
Yes.
So his name was Daryl Beveridge.
Yeah.
And I became friends with his brother, Michael.
Yeah.
Years ago, kind of when I first moved to Sydney. Well, I first met him. He was on Big Brother. He was a redhead on Big Brother in 2013, Michael Beveridge. And I remember watching Big Brother at that age and being like, this man is the funniest person I've ever seen. I remember he was the first person to come into the house and he just walked around talking to himself. And I was like, this person is a star. He's so funny.
Yeah.
And a few years later, I was interning at Fox FM and he had a show. And I went and kind of watched them do it. And then years later, we became friends in Sydney through another mutual friend and we started hanging out. And I remember going to icebergs with him because him and I loved going swimming.
Yeah.
And I met his brother Daryl. I remember his brother Daryl sitting on the white steps of icebergs and he had all these like stick and poke, like all these random tattoos. And we got talking and I realised that he was the Instagrammer Cooksuck.
Yeah.
So Cooksuck was this Instagram. I don't know if you remember it.
I don't really, but I did look it up. Yeah.
So it was an anonymous page where he would do food reviews. So like it was back in the day when people would post photos of their food on the internet.
Yeah.
And they were disgusting.
Yeah.
So he'd go around the internet or people would submit these photos of these like gross meals and he would just rip into them and create these whole universes and these stories about the people that were making it.
Yeah.
It sounds like quite mean, but it was so smart and funny and cutting and creative.
Yeah.
And I was obviously obsessed with it as a writer. And I thought, I want to be like Cooksuck. And then I realised that it was my friend's brother and I thought, oh my God, that's Cooksuck. And we became like little internet buddies and we'd have this complete like parasocial relationship, I guess, except it was like with each other. And every time I'd cook something and put it on the internet, he'd go, oh, Froomy, like, this is not good. This doesn't look good, babe. And just rip into me. And every time I get a message from him, it was just funny. Like, those relationships you have with people and there's no niceties. He was never blowing smoke up my ass. He'd go, oh, babe, you didn't hit with this one. Or
it was just really real.
Yeah, really real. And I love when people are real but also so witty and funny, and that was him.
Yeah.
And he was such a swim rat. Like he'd always be swimming in the ocean and doing laps, and I'd see him at icebergs all the time. And he would always say, Froomy, come on, you got to get up and go for a swim. He'd always tell me to get up and go for a swim. And at the time I was definitely still dealing with my eating disorder, so I couldn't do things like that. I couldn't go and be spontaneous and just come for a swim.
Yeah.
And he passed away a few years ago. And I found out actually that he'd passed away when I was at icebergs. And I remember just standing there being like, I just couldn't believe it. And his brother Michael I'd say he's one of my best friends. And obviously it's like when someone's young and they die, it's shocking, and it's just, you just can't believe that this person who's got this larger than life energy about them passes away. And now I go swimming almost every day in Sydney. I love it. And I get into the ocean and I think about him and I think about his like contribution. I honestly think it's like a massive contribution to Australian culture in that time on the internet.
Yeah.
And I think about him. I thought about him a lot when I wrote the book. I have a poster that was made after he passed away. Like Hot Chook was his Instagram name, and like on his actual Instagram.
Yeah.
And it would hang above me while I was writing. And if I was writing something and I thought it sounded corny, I'd like imagine him being like, oh, Froomes, like this stinks, you know? And then when I'd write something really funny, I think, oh yeah, I think Daryl would like that.
Yeah.
So it was just a really beautiful example, I think, as well of like the internet bringing people together and being able to find people who
are your people.
Your people, yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like you guys have a lot in common as well. Like especially I've, followed your food blogs for a long time too. I mean, back to the goulash as well, but you bring that comedy and wit into it and you obviously had such a beautiful connection. How did you grieve your friend, Daryl?
Well, I think for me it's more spending time with his brother Michael.
Yeah.
Like as close as I was to Daryl, I hadn't known him for that long, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more kind of like because he wasn't a massive part of my everyday life, it's more of a passive thinking about him. I think of him.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm really close to his brother Michael, so I like to talk about him with Michael.
Yeah.
Because I know that Michael is a very intelligent, quick person and will be the first one to be happy to talk about his brother. And it's taught me that when people lose someone really close to them, I think they do want to talk about the person. And I think being someone who hasn't lost that many people in my life, I think we are very awkward around death.
Absolutely.
And like it is hard. You don't want to bring it up with your friend. Like you don't want to bring the mood down, but then also I think people want an opportunity to talk about the person that they love, just because they're gone doesn't mean you don't want to talk about them. So I like to talk to Michael about him and just have that beautiful relationship with Michael and know that Daryl is a massive influence on what I do with work. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, that's so interesting what you said about people do want to talk about their loved ones that may have passed, but there is, I don't know if taboo is the right word, but it is a hard conversation to broach, but death doesn't need to be mystified. They're people that we love so much, that mean so much to us, like we can, it's interesting. So the ocean swimming, Daryl was obviously encouraging you, but did you actually begin before or after his passing? Did you begin swimming with him?
No, never. That's what I mean. I'd always say, shit, I gotta go. And I never really would. But now I do it, daily. And I love going to icebergs, or I love going all around Bondi or Clovelly or, all these beautiful Sydney beaches. And I have a real affinity to them now and a full appreciation of it.
Yeah.
You never regret a swim is what we'll say. And I just love it. Growing up, I grew up in the suburbs, like never went to the beach. So it took me quite a few years of living in Sydney to fully appreciate it and become like a swim rat.
Yeah.
But now I am that, and it's my favourite part of the day. And again, it reminds me of being a recovered person, because I know that when I had my eating disorder, I didn't have energy to do stuff like that and I couldn't fit it into my day. Whereas now that I take things a lot slower, I'm able to go and laze and spend a lunch break down at the beach, just dipping in and out, not doing laps, but just frolicking and like looking at the underwater creatures and stuff like that. It's so special.
Just being mindful.
Yeah. Not even being like being not mindful. Like just feeling the sensational. I love sensations, and I feel like Sydney's
Did you lost that a little bit when you were, I guess, quite regimented with your life in your early 20s?
Totally. You're on autopilot, surviving, I think, and going very fast. It's very hard to go slow when you're stuck in your head, I think.
I miss the beach a lot as well.
Yes,
being a Perth girlie and now living in Melbourne, a big city, because I completely know that feeling when you just get there. When I was back in Perth earlier this year, I just went and sat in the car because it was like a really, really rainy day, but I just was like staring at the ocean. I was like, can't wait to get in you. But it's just being around nature and You also told us that Daryl was one of the funniest writers you knew. You did mention this before actually. When you would be writing, you had the picture of him up on the wall. You were kind of like, mental note, Daryl, what are you thinking? Do you think this is funny enough? Can you speak to this? And how did you find weaving humour into, your own book?
I think writing in a way that's trying to be entertaining comes more naturally to me. It's when I try and be earnest that I find that more difficult.
Yeah.
So with the book, it probably the chapter Tuna, which was like solely about my eating disorder, that had already been a newsletter. So I kind of found the correct tone for me in that one. But I think I really try with my writing to write the way that I talk. And that's something that I learned kind of early on. Is I think it's so tempting to try and sound smarter when you write or use bigger words or this or that. Now, whenever I write something, I read it aloud to see how it reads.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't sound like me or it's hard to say, I take it out, which was quite fortuitous. It's good that I did that in the writing because I ended up doing the audiobook, and you can really tell the sentences that sound the best are the ones that just, if we transcribe this conversation.
Yeah.
So it was a thing in the back of my mind. I think, okay, so this is the message that I want to get across. How can I make it the most entertaining, or how can I make it not too wet or not too sentimental, but still give it gravitas?
Yeah. Well, it definitely has that. You got the perfect balance for me.
Thank you, babe.
We've been talking about the most special things you've inherited in your life so far. With every guest, we finish on one question. What is something you intend on passing on, and who are you passing it on to?
Yes, cool. I think that I'm going to pass on. I love secondhand shopping, consignment, or your bottom of the basement salvo fit. Like, I love collecting things like that. So I think by the time it's my time to fly the coop or whatever, I'll have a beautiful collection of things. Like I've got some designer clothes that I've kept, like a beautiful coat or a beautiful bag, and there's a few of them. Some of them I've never touched, others that I live with.
Yeah.
And I want to pass them on. I love objects, and even from a young age I would have dreams about like a beautiful jewel pool, and there's fairies in the pool and you can go down and grab a jewel in the bottom. So I think as well, jewelry for me, like I'm wearing my dad's ring right now.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
That was your dad's, yeah.
And he wore it on his, I mean, he's still alive, but he'd wear it on his pinky.
Yeah.
And like he lost it one time and then it showed up in the most random place. It's very like special, and I keep it on me in Sydney, and it reminds me of him. So I think I find jewelry, and I love objects. So anything that's jewelry or got some sort of uniqueness to it. That's why I love vintage clothes, because I'm like, I've got this beautiful coat, no one else can get it.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's unique.
I get ripped into, babe. On TikTok, I'm really coming into my own with finding awesome sunglasses. So I've got like 3 pairs on rotation. They're all vintage. 2 of them don't have any brands on them.
So you don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
I love that too.
It's the best.
Yeah.
But I post on TikTok just wearing the sunnies.
Yeah.
And someone threatened me yesterday being like, someone had said, where are these glasses from? And like 3 people had said like F, like following and whatever. I finally got around to saying what they were. Yeah. But at the exact same time, someone commented being like, gatekeepers will be punished. I'm going to download her book and spread it on the internet as a PDF. Like,
were they kidding?
No.
Oh my God. I thought maybe they're like just
no.
Okay,
they
guys.
were like a random person, and it took everything in my body to not like lash out and do a TikTok where I'm like, look, I'm trying to find a brand and there's no brand. But I
like, let me live in my sunnies.
Yeah. And I'm the last person to gatekeep. I would love to feel like I'm influential. It's not often that I get asked where stuff's from, but God, you better not be gatekeeping on TikTok, guys, because they're going to come for you. Scary.
Froomes, thank you so much for joining me today on Inherited. Congratulations again on the release of your new book. All I've ever wanted to be was hot. And yeah, thanks for sharing your story with me today. I think that it will really touch the lives of so many, and it's very vulnerable. So
thank you, Ruby.
I'm excited for you as well and to see what's next with Ruby.
I know. I don't even know. Watch this space. We'll see.
Yeah.
Bye, Ruby.
Bye. You've been listening to Inherited. To support Lucinda, follow her on Instagram @Froomes. And if you would like to buy her book, you can grab it at any good bookstore. All I ever wanted was to be hot. A quick one as well before you go. We are a new show, and if you want to help support us, please make sure you click subscribe on YouTube right now. It's how we grow our audience, and it's how I can continue to speak to really incredible guests. Also, if you've got your phone near you as well, take a photo, put it on your stories. Please spread the word, because we are only new to YouTube. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'll be back with another episode next Tuesday.